What's going on? I'm Jordan Wheeler with RTR Vehicles, and in today's episode we are installing the RTR Tactical Performance Coilovers on your 05 to 14 Mustang GT or V6. Inside your box you'll find new front struts, front springs, front sway bar end link, rear shocks with nuts, rear springs, adjustable perch, adjuster cap, spanner wrenches, spacers, as well as your installation instructions. Now, since we will be modifying the suspension on this vehicle, make sure to take it to a professional to have it properly aligned. RTR has also gone ahead and put some alignment specifications in the back of this packet for you to help you with that job. Inside the instructions, you're also going to find things like ride height adjustment, dampening forces, and we went ahead and threw in some specifications that we like to use for road course use. For this installation, we're going to need 6mm hex socket, 10mm socket, 12mm socket, 13mm socket, 14mm socket, 15mm socket, 18mm socket, 19mm socket, 21mm socket, 22mm socket, socket wrench, extension, 19mm wrench, 18mm wrench, 15mm wrench, 14mm wrench, 13mm wrench, impact, torque wrench, body clip removal tool, pry bar, and for installations on the ground you'll need a hydraulic jack. And I use this spring compressor, but you can easily rent one from your local AutoZone. This week we're back at the RTR lab where I have complete access to our full lineup of gear wrench tools, as well as these 2-post Coates lifts. But you can handle this easily in your own driveway. For this installation, we're going to be using RTR number 001. Now, these vehicles did come from the dealers with the Ford Performance shocks and dampeners, as well as the lowering springs. Some of the items that you may see in this installation may be slightly different from what you see on your stock vehicle, but the installation process will be the same with possibly some different size nuts or bolts. Starting with the vehicle elevated, remove the car's wheels. With at least one lug nut in place, use your 15mm wrench to remove the 2 bolts holding the brake caliper in place. Remove the brake rotor and set it aside. I slid the caliper up onto the K-member, then secured it with a zip tie. You can now remove the lug nut and set the brake rotor off to the side. Next, using your body clip removal tool, remove the speed sensor anchor mounted to the car's front struts. Remove the brake line using your 10mm socket. Remove the sway bar end link by using your 19mm and 14mm wrenches. You can also use your 14mm wrench and 19mm socket. Then remove the 2 spindle bolts using your 18mm socket and set them aside. Pull the spindle away from the bottom of the OEM strut and then head up top. Using your 13mm wrench, remove the 4 nuts holding the strut to the strut tower, and remove the strut. Next, you'll want to compress the factory spring and use a 21mm socket to remove the top hat. Add your OEM bearing and top hat to the new spring. Slide the coilover into the top hat and torque to 26 pound-feet using your provided nut. Now lift the coilover back into the strut tower and hand tighten the 4 nuts. Reinstall the OEM spindle bolts to the RTR Tactical Performance Coilovers and torque to 184 pound-feet. Then go back and torque the upper strut bolts to 46 pound-feet. With your coilovers in place, you can now install the new sway bar end link and torque the nuts to 85 pound-feet. Reinstall the brake line to the strut using the provided bolt and nut. Then re-anchor the speed sensor tree fork, reinstall the rotor, and brake caliper. You can now screw the adjuster caps to the top of the strut, then head to the back. After removing your rear wheels, use your 14mm wrench to remove the sway bar to end link bolt and nut. Next, take the 10mm socket and remove the brake line bracket from the chassis. Using a hydraulic floor jack, support the diff. Pull back the trunk carpet. Using your clip remover and 10mm socket, remove the side trunk liner. With the shock rod now exposed, use your 14mm wrench to remove the nut or nuts. Slowly lower the jack until the shock rod clears the body. Now remove the lower shock hardware using your 15mm wrench. Then remove the spring from the vehicle. Your upper and lower spring isolators are to remain in the vehicle. We recommend removing the OEM bump stop on the axle to allow for increased travel. The RTR shocks are equipped with bump stops to prevent metal-to-metal contact. Now you can install the spring and adjuster perch into the body and onto the axle. Remove the shock rod nut and install the shock into the axle clevis with the bolt and nut hand tight. Slowly raise the floor jack and guide the shock rod into the body mount, and torque the lower shock bolt to 85 pound-feet. Install the shock nut onto the shock rod and torque to 26 pound-feet. Then reconnect the sway bar link and torque the bolt to 85 pound-feet. Reinstall the brake line. Install the adjuster top to the top of your shock. You now place your wheels back on the vehicle, and once on the ground, the lower control arms will need to be loosened with the vehicle's weight on the wheels and retorqued to 129 pound-feet to neutralize the bushings.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I hope you found it informative and useful in the installation of your parts. Make sure to head over to rtrvehicles.com for our full lineup of Mustang, Ranger, F-150, Bronco, and Bronco Sport parts, as well as a sweet line of merch that makes you look killer on track days. I'm Jordan Wheeler with RTR Vehicles, and I'll catch you on the other side of fun. Whoa!